A Harrisonburg resident says a cat's death was anything but quick and painless after it was struck by a vehicle, and he wants police held responsible. He shared his story today with News 3's Tim Ronca.
Shocking is how Wayne Meadows describes the way a Harrisonburg police officer euthanized a cat he rescued from the side of the road. He says the officer beat the cat to death with his nightstick.
I was a wreck at that point. I mean, I was completely in shock. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do.
When Wayne told the officer to euthanize the cat, that was the last thing he expected. This is the patio where Wayne says this happened. You can actually see there's some damage here to the siding and both to the rocks here that Wayne says was not here before. There's also some stains that are left over from the incident as well. Wayne had to turn inside when this went on, but he says he heard 15 to 20 hits, and then the officer removed the body, but he had to clean up the rest.
It was nasty, to say the least. I was sick to my stomach the whole time doing it. I tried to wash it off as best as I could.
The officer told him to contact police because of damage to the house, which he did, but he says they didn't get back to him. The department offered us this statement that they did indeed receive the complaint. An internal investigation was conducted into this matter, and appropriate action has been taken internally. In addition, the department continues to review the current procedures in handling animal complaints to determine if any changes or modifications need to be made. Wayne says he was so shocked to act at the time, but he hopes this never happens again.
The only thing that I wish that I had done differently is as soon as I saw that nightstick, I would have ran out and stopped him. That's what I wish I would have done.
It's Tim Ronca reporting. Harrisonburg police did not say whether or not they contacted Wayne afterward. He says he's tried several times to complain, and as of tonight, he's not heard back. We also asked the police department to explain their euthanasia policy, but did not receive a clear answer. Was a police officer following policy when he allegedly beat an injured cat with his nightstick? Good evening, everyone. I'm Val Thompson.
And I'm Melanie Lofton. Thanks for joining us. That is the question we're trying to answer tonight.
Well, many of you were outraged over allegations that that's what an HPD officer did, to kill a cat that was severely injured. A Harrisonburg man said it happened here at his house. Now, Heather Campbell said on our Facebook page, "Not okay by any means. What kind of human being can beat a cat or any animal with a stick? Hadn't the cat suffered enough already?"
Teresa Cummings Clark added, any other citizen doing something like this will be locked up and the key thrown away. What makes it different when it's the police? And tonight we're trying to get answers to those questions. Was this within policy, and is that officer being held accountable?
Now, police have given us a bit more information, but some questions still remain unanswered. Tim Ronca joins us live on Court Square. Tim, were police able to clarify their policy regarding putting an animal down?
Good evening, Val. Good evening, Mel. Basically, yes and no. They basically said that deadly force is acceptable on an injured animal, usually by firearm. But it's unclear if that could mean something else, like a nightstick. After Wayne Meadows witnessed a police officer beat an injured cat to death, he says calls to Harrisonburg PD went unanswered. So he turned to Ann Anderson and the Rockingham-Harrisonburg SPCA.
The SPCA, as well as myself, were outraged and appalled by the situation.
She met with police herself, and they assured her they were handling the issue.
I can honestly say the police department was, I believe, as appalled as we were with the situation.
Mary Hope Vass with HPD told us today that officers can use deadly force on an animal if it's necessary.
Use of deadly force in our policy is understood as using a firearm.
In other words, not a nightstick, but Vass says their animal policy is strictly a guideline.
Each circumstance is different, each situation is different, so it's difficult to group all animal complaints or incidents into one category.
Ann says the SPCA is happy to take in injured cats, but couldn't that night due to the late hour this happened. She says the Shenandoah Regional Emergency Vet is another option during off hours.
No one in this position, I don't feel, is qualified to make that call as to whether this was indeed an animal that needed to be euthanized or an animal that could be treated.
Now, police tell me they are currently reviewing their animal policy in light of this incident. They're hoping to make the guidelines more clear so something like this doesn't happen again. Live in Harrisonburg, Tim Ronca, WHSV News 3.
I was a wreck at that point. I mean, I was completely in shock. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do.
Reaction continues weeks after he first told you about a Harrisonburg man who told us he heard a Harrisonburg police officer beat a dying cat to death.
It's a story that we here at TV3 first broke after we got the call from the concerned neighbor who told us about that gruesome situation he heard firsthand. Again, we want to recap this story for you tonight. You're looking at the patio where an HPD officer allegedly beat a dying cat with his nightstick to put it down. You can see there's some damage from the incident that was left for the homeowner to clean up. Now, this story is not only a talker here in the Valley, but it's making news headlines around the country and world tonight. And folks across the world are voicing their opinion in a petition against that officer tonight. We know this petition that started right here in Harrisonburg is getting attention not only here in the Valley, but in Brazil, Italy, all the way to Australia, South Africa, Japan, and Mexico, along with several other countries, also all the states almost practically here in the United States.
Today we checked in with Wayne Meadows, the man who voiced his concern to us, to follow up on what he thinks of the attention that this story has received. He said he is surprised at how far it has reached, but is glad that people are supporting him. Wayne is also disappointed with the way the police have handled the investigation. He believes witnesses to the event should have been contacted. He is also frustrated in the closed nature of the investigation.
Police department hasn't released any information about it. You know, everything is an internal investigation, and they don't want to release the information about what's happened, what things have changed because of this, what if any punishment had gone against the officer in question.
Wayne also stresses that calling in the officer was the last thing he tried after calling multiple other agencies. Harrisonburg police tell us that they have dealt with the matter internally and action has been taken. They also continue to review their policy with animal control. Harrisonburg police gave us a response saying, quote, an internal investigation was conducted into this matter and appropriate action has been taken internally. In addition, the department continues to review the current procedures in handling animal complaints to determine if any changes or modifications need to be made.
Well, as you can tell tonight, this story is quite the talker, and tonight we've reached out to our folks on our Facebook page asking you what you thought about this story. Here's a live look at what some of you are telling us this evening. Cheryl shares with us, no, he needs to be charged and make an apology to the public instead of hiding behind the police department. Linda shares with us this evening, animal abuse is animal abuse. There had to be a better way to handle the situation. My feelings would not change if a non-police person had committed this crime. And this story is getting a huge response online. One person has even created a Facebook page group devoted to bringing attention to this investigation. As you can see that page right here on your screen. And we want to hear what you think about this story tonight. Log on to Facebook and search for WHSV to share your thoughts and opinions with us. Bob.
Just weeks after a Harrisonburg police officer beat a dying cat to death, there is now an outside investigation underway. News 3's Tim Ronca talked with two national groups who helped get the investigation started.
When Wayne Meadows shared with TV3 his story of a Harrisonburg police officer who beat a cat on his porch, it caught the attention of groups nationwide. Now, after pressure from groups like PETA, there will be a formal investigation.
The description by the eyewitness of what happened was gruesome and sounds very likely to have been a violation of the anti-cruelty statutes of Virginia.
Virginia State Police are leading the investigation. Cat advocacy group Alley Cat Allies says they want to see charges.
Based on what we've heard and the case that he also committed a horrific act of animal cruelty, and that can be prosecuted through the Commonwealth's attorney in the state of Virginia.
That's why Rockingham-Harrisonburg Commonwealth's attorney Marcia Garst wanted an investigation by a third party, and after pressure from several hundred concerned residents.
About 500 or so in the state of Virginia who we have communicated with, and they have in turn communicated back to the city because they're so concerned about this case and want to make sure that the citizens hear what happens, that there's accountability.
Representatives from PETA also say it's important for pet owners to take care of their animals so things like this don't happen again.
And of the dozens of cruelty cases that PETA receives every single day, the majority of animals who are victimized were left outdoors unattended.
In Harrisonburg, Tim Ronca, WHSV News 3.
And hundreds of you are sounding off on both sides of the issue on our Facebook page. Maria Sircosta says if this was a citizen who took the course of action the police officer in the charge took, there will be charges pressed against him or her. He should face the same charges any citizen would face in this case. Kimberly Northrup says, I think it was poor judgment on his part, but I do not think he intended to be cruel. Now you can share your thoughts and opinions on this and other stories on the WHSV Facebook page. Police officer is facing a charge after allegedly beating a cat to death with his nightstick. An investigation ended this morning. That officer is charged with one misdemeanor count of animal cruelty. News 3's Tim Rocca has been following this story. He has all the details plus an interview with the man who says he witnessed the beating. Good evening, Tim.
Good evening, Mel. Virginia State Police have just finished their investigation into local officer J.N. Snoddy. He faces a Class 1 misdemeanor, the toughest you can face. But for the man who saw the beating happen, he can finally get some closure. Months after Wayne Meadows says he saw a police officer beat a dying cat to death, the shock he felt from what he saw on his porch still hasn't gone away. But he's relieved that there is now a charge.
I still have my moments. The memory's never going to go away, but it does sort of bring a little bit of closure to it.
The siding of his house and some of the rock work remain damaged from a Harrisonburg police officer who allegedly beat a cat to death with a nightstick that Wayne had rescued after it was hit by a car in November. It affected him so much he had to take time off.
I'm back working now. It doesn't really affect me as much now as it did. For the first week or so afterwards, I guess I was pretty much a wreck at that point.
Virginia State Police launched an investigation and charged Officer J.N. Snoddy with animal cruelty. Harrisonburg Police say he has been put on leave.
We'll wait until the court processes are complete, but from now until then, the officer will remain on administrative leave.
Wayne is grateful something was done about it, and he and his dog Yoda can now carry on with their lives.
Well, I guess I'd like to see some more training in regards to things regarding, domestic animals and well, I guess just animals in general and the way to deal with them.
And Officer Snoddy was put on leave this morning. He will be prosecuted by the local Commonwealth's attorney and the city of Harrisonburg. In the meantime, police tell me they have already begun to review their animal policy to make it more clear.
The Harrisonburg police officer accused of beating an injured cat to death will be put on trial on April 3rd. Officer Jonathan Snoddy will face a judge in Rockingham County General District Court. Virginia State Police charged him with one misdemeanor count of animal cruelty. The judge is waiting on a necropsy report on what specifically killed the cat. His court date may be moved up depending on those results. The charges stem from an incident in November when Snoddy was called to take care of a severely injured cat. Instead of shooting it, he allegedly beat it to death with his nightstick.